Well, thank you. Thank you for having me in this session. And I think we're going to have an awesome discussion today. So our topic is managing construction engineering and inspection contracts. And we have some 4 really great panel members that are going to help us with this discussion. And once we're done with these, we have some questions that I'm going to go ahead and be asking my panel. But once we're done, we're going to go ahead and open it up and see what questions the audience has. And so feel free to throw any question at us and to put whoever you'd like on the spot. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with bios. And our first panel member is Ben Engelhardt. He's our Austin District Director of Construction. Ben started his career with TxDOT in December of 1999 after graduating from Texas A&M University. In late 2014, he became the Austin District Director of Construction. Ben is married to Jessica, and they have 1 daughter, Olivia. Next on our panel, we have Amanda Moser, who's our CEI Transportation Engineer from Dallas County Area Office. Amanda graduated from Texas A&M University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering in December of 2009. She began her career with TxDOT in February 2010 as an engineering assistant in the rotation program and worked in design, traffic operations, and construction. She became a licensed professional engineer in 2014, and in 2017, she became the CE&I Transportation Engineer in the Dallas County Area Office, managing multiple construction projects. Next with us, we have Andy Petter, who's our CEI Project Manager with H.W. Lochner. Andy was born and raised in Waco, Texas, and received his civil engineering degree from Texas A&M in 1987. He had a 28-year career with TxDOT, where he worked in various area offices in the Waco district. He was the area engineer in Wichita Falls and the director of TP&D in Waco, and then he retired as deputy district engineer in Waco in August of 2015. He has worked for Lochner since then, overseeing construction projects in Odessa, Brownwood, and the San Antonio districts. Andy's proudest accomplishment is serving as the grandfather for Roger and Josie Petter. And lastly, we have Randy Redmond, who's our Texas Regional Vice President with Volkert. Randy Redmond is a 1989 Texas A&M graduate and a 2014 recipient of the DeWitt C. Greer Award. Randy spent 26 years with TxDOT as a designer, inspector, area engineer, director of TP&D, district engineer, and strategic projects office director. Randy enjoys work, golf, friends and family, including his wife Paige and sons Hunter and Rye. Please help me welcome our panel members. So CE&Is are still fairly new to TxDOT, even though we started them up and started hiring consultants to help us. We still have a lot of learning to do, and I think we have had some really great accomplishments on various projects throughout the state. And with our letting just increasing and continuously going up, really CE&I is pretty much here to stay, at least for now, and they're really here to help all of our districts around the state. So I'm going to start off with my first panel question, which is going to go to Ben. So Ben, what challenges and opportunities have you and your staff at TxDOT had to work through and overcome due to TxDOT's increased use of CE&I contracts?
Good question, Gina. And we've actually started our CEI program several years ago, and every job starts a new challenge. And one of those challenges we've had to do is just basically create and stand up that CEI program in the Austin district. And a lot of that had to do with setting some policies. But the biggest issue that we've had to overcome is just that relationships at the beginning of the job. I think everybody in here knows how to do their job, but do you know how to do the job? And what I mean there is, Martin mentioned it earlier, there's 25 different districts. Every district has a different area office. How do they want that job done? And that's one of the things that we have to start out at the beginning of a job and make sure we understand our roles and have that meeting up front with the CEIs and say, this is going to be your job. This is what we want to see out of this product and this job. We've got a long job that we've started off here back in January. Great consultant on board, large job, really set up for success for TxDOT and the consultant to really come in and do a good job. But we've had some hurdles on this job. We get out there and we're delivering some public information documents. The consultant's doing a great job, but it may not be quite what our district's looking for. And we've had to go back and sit down and have some meetings and discuss what is the district looking for, what is the product we're looking for, because this consultant does a great job, came from another area office, that's what they wanted, but at this area office we needed something a little bit different. So we just really worked hard on setting that relationships up, understanding it may take time to develop those relationships. Again, it's a 3-year job. We're 10 months into that job and still developing that relationship, but it's exciting to see them grow. The area engineer goes to those meetings and talks with that consultant and makes sure they understand. Consultant comes back with feedback, but it's, again, I think everybody at this conference talks about communication, and that's really what it came down to, is just making sure they're having those discussions and making sure they're telling them that what that product needs to look like, so we make sure that we understand what each party wants.
Thank you. Andy, why don't you give us your perspective from a consultant?
Okay. Well, I will agree wholeheartedly with what Ben said. Communication is key. You know, we've all had personally various bosses through the years, and as CEI, and we get a new assignment in various area offices, each area office is like a new boss. You know, I've got to learn what this new boss is expecting from me. Do they want very little engineering work from me and management work from me? They want to oversee the inspector more directly from the area office, or do they want a full-scale CEI that want to see me or my project engineer out there regularly and often? Again, that communication early to learn that from the area office and what they're expecting is key. Again, you know, working in various districts for various area offices, I can end up with a different boss every day of the week or almost numerous hours in a day working for various area engineers. So again, I got to be flexible and learn and work hard at learning what the area office is expecting. One of the other challenges we have on the CEI side, and is staffing the projects. You know, those work authorizations come in, and we need to staff up and figure out how we're going to staff a project. Is that 1 inspector? Is that 7? Where is it? Do we have staff available in the area? You know, and it's ideal if you're ending a project of similar size in the area and the next one's starting up in a week or 2 and you just roll right on to the next project, it's ideal. But when you have those gaps of months maybe, trying to find something to do with those inspectors, it's difficult to send them to the house or they're going to start looking to work for somebody else, or you have the problem of an overlap of 3 or 4 months, and then I have a staff on one job, but I need staff on the other, and if I can't share those inspectors between the jobs, that's going to be a challenge. So it's nothing so much that TxDOT can do except understand our challenges on that end and some of the how time consuming that can be to get the right person, right inspectors on the job.
So Amanda, what challenges have you faced?
Yeah, so for us, and it kind of goes on like leading on to this, what he was saying about when you have multiple projects, one of the things that we're seeing is, you know, we select a CEI team and you have a certain team that's there, and then if with the extra amount of CEI contracts, you may win multiple projects, and so you're in different locations, and so there's changing of staff, and so we understand that you know, something that the CEI teams are dealing with, but we're, you know, that's just something that we've had to see. We want to make sure that we're still getting what we bought off on when we selected that team. So that's one of the things we've had to work with. And then another one is, since there's an increased CEI contracts, you can have a CEI team who this is maybe their 4th project that they've worked on, so they understand the TxDOT project. Or you could select a new CEI team, and this may be their first TxDOT project, even though they've done inspection for other agencies. And TxDOT, every different agency or city has certain things that they want done. So we also need to understand that there's going to be new CEI teams, and that means that we've got to upfront help train. And some of the things that we've done is that we'll have like a crash course day or two training where we bring our CEI team in, and we have all of them bring their computers, make sure they can log on, walk them through Site Manager, and we've had our lab come in and help show how to like clear deficiencies, different things that TxDOT may do that if you're new working on a TxDOT CEI contract that you wouldn't have had experience with before. So we're also trying to help support that CEI staff. They're an extension of TxDOT, so we want to make sure that they're successful. And if this is the first CEI contract, we want to be there to help train and support them from the very start.
So Randy, what's your perspective on this? What challenges?
I agree with everything the panel to the right said. Ditto. No, great comments. We all face the same predicaments with CEI, and it's great to see the market growing so well, and industry and us as partners will work together to make sure we can support our clients with that increased industry. Communications up front is always the key to any endeavor we undertake, and so talking up front, understanding what the client, which in this case is probably going to be the area engineer, area office, is assigned PM, or it may be district construction, establishing the plan that meets those needs, and then being flexible enough as the project evolves. And I haven't seen one yet that initial plan, staffing plan, didn't need to be tweaked a little bit, and maybe bring in some more Tech 3s rather than Tech 2s, or bring in 5 inspectors instead of 3 inspectors. So we're always willing and happy to work with the client to make sure we have the right staffing out there.
Okay. All right, for our next question, Amanda, I'm going to start with you. One of the complaints that we hear from the contractors, from the contracting community, is that we've created another level of decision-making that delays responses, delays just construction operations. So how should the roles and responsibilities of TxDOT and consulting staff be defined to ensure effective communication and timely responses to contractor issues on CE&I projects? So how do you do that in your district?
Right. So that's a good question. We've heard the same thing. So some of the things that we do up front is that we want to make sure that we have our CEI team on board, and the expectation between the CEI team and TxDOT is very clear, and we're both on the same page. And then we come together, in the Dallas district, we definitely feel the CEI team is an extension of TxDOT. So we come together, as a team to the pre-construction meetings, our meetings with the contractor, so they feel that it's not a CEI team, that it's TxDOT. So we try to do that up front, where we kind of lay out the expectations, who's going to be responsible for RFIs or submittals, and who's going to help out on change orders. So we have a meeting up front well before we start involving the contractor, and to make sure that we're all on the same page for that. And then we'll sometimes do like a matrix sheet so it's like all laid out and it's clear between what our expectations are with the CEI team. So if we ever need to refer back to that, but that also gets tweaked, like you said, projects are always changing, and you have something that'll pop up that you weren't expecting that you've got to do moving forward. And then one thing too is trying to make sure that as a district we're planning ahead for what our needs are. So that way we can get a CEI team on board in enough time to where they can become familiar with the plans. We negotiate level of effort and rates and all that up front. So when we get ready to start, we kick that off from the very beginning.
Okay. So Randy, if you could go ahead and tell us from a consultant point of view, what have you seen for the level of decision-making?
What we like to say is trust is the number one factor and expediting any decision. So if our staff will build the trust of our client first, but maybe even more important than that, just like a TxDOT inspector or PM or area engineer building trust with the contractor to help get things done quicker, it's important for the CEI team to build that trust. And if you can get trust going across all three players, you want the project to last 3 years, because at 3-month effort of getting that trust, you don't want the job to end at that point, because you're enjoying working together and you're looking forward to, and hopefully the contractor's calling up the area engineer on some future job and saying, well, consultant X be your CEI on this job.
So Ben, I'm going to go to you now. So you hear consultant mean, oh, they're an extension of our staff, that can be a little cliche. So how do you help with that level of decision-making?
And that is correct. We go to the AGC meeting and we pass around the company Kool-Aid and say, here, contractors, drink the Kool-Aid. You know, the consultant is an extension of our staff. This is what we preach to all the contractors, and then they're doing the nod the head, yes, you're right. And I know they walk out of the room and be like, you know, what, are they really extension? Do we have that trust? And there are jobs that the consultant is truly an extension of our staff, and they've created that trust, like Randy mentions. But we do have jobs where there are issues on the job, and quite frankly, they're an extension of our staff, but Governor Abbott doesn't sign their check, and the contractor knows that, and they want to talk to TxDOT. So my recommendation to our staff in the district is you have to be engaged. And when I say engaged, I'm not saying, okay, contractor, if you have an issue, call the assistant area engineer or the area engineer. Their availability is limited. We have to be engaged down at the ground level, and we need to assign people to a job that can answer those questions and be responsive to the contractor. You know, the contractor will tell you day in and day out, time is money. They ask a question, and the consultant's looking at it for a week, and then he's done with it, and he either calls the assistant or somebody, and they're looking at it for a week. We need to be engaged with that job and get those contractors those answers and show them that we're there with the job, and it's still our job, because it's TxDOT's job to deliver that. If the consultant fails or the contractor fails, it's TxDOT's responsibility. It's the area engineer that's ultimately going to answer that, or the district engineer is going to ultimately answer that failure of the job. So in short is we just try to make sure we have somebody assigned to that job, and it's a lot easier in an urban district. The area offices and the jobs are generally close to each other, and we can have somebody on the job relatively quickly. But ultimately, we make sure we have somebody capable assigned to that job, knows what's going on in that job, attends the weekly meetings, and if not, be embedded on the job day in and day out.
So this next question is for Andy. So I have been personally told by a consultant, you know, we don't know, we should be making these decisions. This really isn't in my scope. So I don't know if we can really make any decisions on the job. So do you feel roles and expectations are clearly defined in your contract terms, and are they clearly communicated at pre-construction and kickoff meetings?
Yes, I think so. I think it's defined in the contract. Thank you.
That was a good answer.
You know,
I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that.
No.
And
but
I guess I'm not saying just
the
for your consulting firm,
Sure.
saying, is it in our contract? But I guess from a consultant's point of view, do you feel that that's something that you're expecting to do? Or do you feel
We
that's
are.
clearly lined out?
Yeah, we are. You know, it's the scope has the language in there that we'll engineer the project and do those kinds of things and supervise our inspection. And so we expect that. You know, I know on the consultant side, and I'm not a legal contract expert, but we do worry about, and our lawyers, you know, may worry about, are we doing too much? Are we taking on the liability we shouldn't? And so want to be sure the scope is well written and covers those things. But I think in general the scope does cover it. I think it's more of an issue, again, back to communication. Some area offices want to be involved in all the engineering decisions. You know, others are willing to let me as the CEI make decisions, you know, and there's the full range of decisions that might be, you know, moving a driveway pipe, moving an inlet, paving a driveway a few feet wider might cost a little bit of money, but I would expect an area office would let us make those decisions on the job. Timely, the question I know originally said something about having timely response, and timely is it's like saying something needs to be fast. Well, that's a very relative term, and what is timely? And so those small decisions, yes, they need to be done timely, and hopefully our chief inspector on the project can make those calls. When it starts to turn into money and maybe a change order, are we getting into $30,000, $50,000? The area office needs to be brought in to discuss those things, and still in a lot of cases, I think, we're going to staff the project, I know, with a lot of experienced personnel, and we're going to make sound decisions, and we expect to hear from the area office, area engineer, if we don't make sound decisions. But again, gaining that level of trust and communication from the area engineer of what the level of decisions they want us to make. It needs to be discussed a lot up front, and it'll grow and get better with time as the project gets rolling.
Okay, thank you. So Amanda, from a TxDOT perspective, do you feel these expectations are clearly defined in the contract? And how do you, let's say at a pre-con meeting or at a kickoff meeting, how do you make that clear that what your expectation is from the CE&I?
It kind of goes back to what I said earlier about like the matrix of just making sure that it's clearly defined, and TxDOT has a good understanding, and so does the CEI team of kind of where we have everything laid out. And another thing that we do is that we have a CEI engineer in every area office, so hopefully that helps with the timeliness of the contractors' questions when they're saying that they're not getting timely answers. Well, if the CEI team maybe doesn't know and they want to talk to somebody at the area office, it's a lot easier to get a hold of the CI engineer. Like, I'm definitely not as busy as the area engineer, so you can reach me a lot easier. And then, so that helps with the timeliness of answering a contractor question. But then we're also there to answer any questions if you're not quite sure if the CI team can make that decision or not. So that seemed to help out, having that one point of contact for those teams in each area office.
Thank you. So my next question is to Randy, and these are going to be for Randy and Andy. Okay, so Randy, I'm going to ask you, you've been on both sides. You've been on the TxDOT side, and now you're on the consultant side. So what improvements would you recommend to our CE&I program to improve the procurement and delivery of services?
Well, my TxDOT client has no room for improvement because they are my best client anywhere. But the industry, the process in general, we all have opportunities. We've gone through some procurements that have been very streamlined and moved through quick. And once the firm or firms were selected, the scope and fee was negotiated in relatively quick time. There's others that sometimes take a while, both on the specific deliverables and in particular on some of these work authorizations that various districts may pick a work authorization from a certain firm to do a certain project, but that project isn't high on that firm's priority. And some of our consultant partners are, meantime, they have staff waiting to work on this project, trying to play a balancing act. So everybody up front, whenever we establish dates that we plan on signing, start to work, whether it's a work authorization or SD, establish it realistically up front, and then all of us do everything we can to get that to that point, get it executed at that point. I could talk on forever, but I'm going to pass the mic. But in my mind, that's one big global thing that we'll continue to talk about years from now.
Okay, so Andy, what about your opinion? What do you see that could possibly be any improvements?
Well, along the lines of what Randy said. I know PEPS has made great strides in speeding up the process, and it's been a big improvement over the last few years. And so we appreciate that. As Randy said, there's always on all sides we need to work to make that as fast as a process as we can, from the selection to the authorization of the contracts and work authorizations. One of the things I was brainstorming and thinking about, and I know the answer to this is probably going to be no, but something to consider. I know in the procurement process, generally we need to follow the FHWA rules and policies, but I know design does some selection by proposal alone, and I'm wondering if possibly TxDOT could work with FHWA, maybe do a pilot project to try a selection, maybe of some smaller IDIQs, do it just based on proposal. That'd really speed up the process in that selection. I don't know that, again, the answer to that is probably no, but it might be something worth pursuing.
Good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I have one last question before we get to any questions from the audience. This is going to go to Ben. So Ben, what changes should TxDOT consider regarding the procurement of contracts throughout the state that would better assist the consultant community in maybe organizing teams and planning the operations?
You know, communication is important, and a lot of our communication happens after y'all are selected and we tell you what we want. And at that point, you're happy to get the job, but there's a lot of information. You're like, man, this would have been great to have 6 months ago. And you know, and frankly, there's a lot of consultants in the room, and there's only one Ben Engelhardt in the Austin district, and it's not in my bandwidth to sit down with every consultant for 30 minutes and say, hey, here's what we're looking for, and here's what the CEI is kind of structured to be. So we're actually going to go to a pre-RFQ meeting in the Austin district, and I've been in past pre-RFQ meetings, and it looks a lot like this, where I do a lot of talking, not sure if anybody's really listening, and there's some blank stares in the audience, and not a lot of questions, and that's our fault. And we're actually going to do a pre-RFQ next week, and it's incumbent upon TxDOT to tell you what we want up front, so y'all can structure your teams, and y'all can pick the right teams, and y'all can understand what you're going at. I mean, it's a CEI ID product, but give me some more information about that, TxDOT. Tell me what I'm looking at. Tell me what I'm getting into. And a lot of that may just be telling you about the Austin district's history. Hey, this is what we did with our last 4 IDs. This is the selection team makeup we generally have for IDs. So we're going to try to make an effort in the Austin district to give that information to y'all so y'all can set those teams up accordingly. Because one thing, like in the Austin district, a lot of times you put together a CI team and you just go out and grab a PIO firm, and it's hey, we're just looking for somebody out there that's not conflicted out, that we know well, and you throw them on the team, and the next thing you know, you get picked on a job like, hey, this is really heavy PIO area, we're going to really lean on your PIO team. You're like, oh man, I really didn't plan on this. So we need to make sure y'all have that information, because there are our avenues of these CEI contracts that we are using that we're not typically used on TxDOT jobs, such as PIOs, such as utility coordination. So we just need to make sure we communicate up front, and so y'all know our expectations when y'all walk in and prepare a proposal, because there is a lot of time and effort in a proposal, and y'all don't want to be just throwing darts at a board and hoping to hit the bullseye.
Thank you. Andy, any suggestions on any changes we should make?
I think, one of the challenges we have on the CEI side, at times we're requested to name a construction superintendent early in the process and have them at the interview possibly, and that can be challenging. And at times that makes a lot of sense from the selection team to require that, and if it's specific deliverable, we know where the project is, how many bridges, is it freeway, is it urban widening kind of thing, that makes sense. IDIQs, that can be a little more challenging, and you're not sure where the job will be, or we talk about a string of off-system bridges, and I really need a bridge expert for my chief inspector, or is it overlay work? And so, anyway, some of those challenges. again, I can sure understand why selection teams require that, and I've done that myself in the past. But, so anyway, just something to consider as we set those up.
Thank you. Amanda, your thoughts?
One of the things I was going to say is a lesson learned on one of the first selection teams I sat on is when we were working with PEPs on who we wanted to be in that interview process, we kind of realized we did not have a good classification to choose to have a chief inspector. And, we do understand that you may not know exactly who your chief inspector is going to be months in advance, but those are the people that we're really dealing with day in and day out, right? So it's great that we have your PM there and your roadway engineer and your bridge engineer, but I'm not dealing with those people 24/7. So we, and that's kind of goes back to being transparent on what we're looking for when we have a selection team. We've just got to be better about being more clear. So when you're putting your team together and you're coming to go after a contract, that you are bringing the people that we're kind of looking for. So that was definitely a lesson learned that we have. We really want to know about your inspection team and the guys who are going to be out there day in and day out, because your PM is not going to be out there every single day. So that's something that we need to work on, and that was kind of a lesson learned that we kind of worked with PEPs on. So
Thank you. So Randy, what are your thoughts? What would better assist the consultant community in organizing teams and planning?
Well, Amanda and Andy and Ben hit on it. I agree with everything they said. Y'all ready to go? No, the add-on to Amanda's comments a little bit is she's right. We have the 1111 and 1121, the bridge and the roadway on all our teams. We try to find the guy with the right personality that has those pre-certs to come to the interview to at least get along. And then I'm not aware of many jobs. I know on some complex jobs they probably have to come out some, but our PM is the roadway, bridge, and anything else. And our construction superintendent or chief inspector is the one handling issues day to day and working with the TxDOT PM. So if you get a chief inspector from the consultant side and the construction superintendent or the PM coming from the area office, which is typically a super tech, and they don't like each other, that contractor's in trouble to start with. And the area engineer is too, because he's going to be getting a lot of phone calls from the contractor. So if there was a way, and I know I said it earlier, we changed staff. We need to change staff as the project grows, but getting that construction superintendent on the panel, which a lot of times isn't the PM for the area office. They'll have somebody named as the PM, but there's somebody else who actually runs it a lot of times. Having them and our main person at the interview, I think will at least shed a little light on the personalities or personality conflicts before we get out there. Better yet, they can meet early.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have our last 10 minutes. We wanted to go ahead and open it up to questions from the audience. And if you could please go ahead and state who your question is directed to. It's directed to TxDOT or it's directed to a consultant. So go ahead and oh, we have a question over here.
I don't think it's working.
It's not working. Hello?
Just repeat it. You may just repeat the question.
Okay, he's on his way, ma'am.
This is for Andy. Why do you not want the interview? I'm the Fort Worth Service Center manager. We get a lot of information from the interviews portion that supports the construction superintendent or the PM. So why do you not want it?
Ooh, that's a good one. Go ahead, Andy. That's a good one.
put me on the spot. You know, I think, again, just an effort to streamline the process. As I said, it's working in some cases in design. I know there's the funding issues of FHWA funds and state funds, but you know, time and the cost of on the consultant side and on the TxDOT side of having those, you know, just the effort of the interview and putting together presentations and the time involved for the CST to gather together and do that, and the PEPS folks to coordinate it. Again, just a thought of maybe the smaller projects, smaller contracts, IDIQs, maybe trying that and seeing how that works, see if that streamlines it and gets TxDOT what they want out of a consultant.
Okay, thank you for that, Andy. Okay, hold on. Please, go ahead.
We love your idea so much that we did that the last rule change. So that is a toolbox. We can go from straight proposal right to selection. So that would be for less risky projects.
Yeah.
But we do have that.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
so,
good. I did not know
so
that.
as he said, we do have that in the toolbox where we don't have to do the actual interview. We can go from proposal to selection.
Thank you for taking my suggestion.
The problem is that, just that thought thing that just happened sometime back.
Okay, there was another question somewhere over here. Okay, yes, sir.
The question is for TxDOT. So we keep seeing this construction superintendent classification more and more often, and we are thinking of this super inspector that is going to be able to handle everything. And so what happened with the PE, resident engineer, for the project? What about having a person that has a engineering judgment to make decisions? And along with this construction superintendent, we see the PM hours being reduced and more. So is that the intent, to just do away from the resident engineering position?
I think a lot of it from our standpoint is trying to structure the job. Again, y'all are extension of TxDOT and trying to structure the job like TxDOT would structure the job. I think we had some projects where we had full-time PEs on the job that we were paying for a full-time PE to be there when we didn't quite need that service. So it's really trying to structure like TxDOT job, because I was an air engineer for several years, and not every job had a PE on it. There was a PE assigned to it, but not necessarily on that job, and worked back at the office and then went out as necessary. So from our approach, we're just trying to set it up to mimic what we've got in the field, where we typically sign somebody out there with the sense to make some decisions, but if it requires some escalation, that we have that in place and we have that support from the CEI to bring in a PE as necessary. And as an area engineer, I would have loved to have been on a seal coat a couple of times and get out of the office, but it wasn't feasible.
That's right.
I'm not really sure that there's anything else I can add to that. That's essentially kind of how we handle it, is that we just want to structure it the same way that we have our other TxDOT projects. And the way that is we typically do not have an engineer on site, 40 plus hours a week. We do have the engineers like on our project in case, issues have to get escalated, or if a chief inspector isn't comfortable making a decision, that they can call their PM that they have out there, or they could call the TxDOT guys. Since I'm the CI engineer in the office, and they all had, my contact information. So if they couldn't get a hold of their resident engineer that was on the job, then they could feel free to give me a call.
Yeah, normally our chief inspectors are the ones out there that, are running the job, can make the decision right on site. Just because, just as Ben and Amanda said, our engineers can't be on every project, but as long as we know it's a chief inspector that we can rely on, that can build the job, a lot of them, they build the jobs with their eyes closed, and those are ones we really rely on.
And we're
Okay.
also trying to balance, let me add one more thing, Gina, if you don't mind. We're also trying to balance that budget. There's some numbers we're trying to hit. When you submit your new salaries to PEPS, if you lower those numbers, we'll see some more staff maybe, but.
Oh, that's good.
But, so we'll know in January. But one of the things we're trying to do is we're bringing up more PIO from these CEIs because they can bring that. They can bring that talent. They can bring that PIO angle that we generally don't have on some of these jobs. They can create pamphlets and flyers on the fly. Then also we're bringing in that utility manager. So we're trying to spread that money and that budget across several areas of expertise. And it just happens to be that we just got to draw down that PE cost so we can move that over to the PIO because we are getting a really good bang for our buck. My wife's in PIO, and she says we can do a lot of bad things to people, to the public, as long as we give them advance notice and tell them it's coming. They generally accept that. I don't know if that's how she worded it, because she's a PIO person. She might have been a little more eloquent than that, but so we're ramping up those other avenues so that way when our job does have something coming up, we have the ability to address the needs for that job, and it's not always needing an engineer.
So we have time for just one more question. Who wants to take the last question? Oh, we have it right over here.
This question is for TxDOT, so I'll preface the question by saying just on a normal CE&I job, from a contractor's perspective, when there's additional work that needs to get done on a job, and you ask a contractor to do additional work, the first thing you'll do is you negotiate a price and you'll do a change order. But a lot of times that contractor is allowed to proceed with the work because it may take 2 weeks before that change order is approved or maybe a month before the change order is approved. From a CE&I perspective, to get your thoughts on this, but why can there not be an effective date on your contract? So if you're asking a CE&I firm to go to a pre-con and yet the work authorization is not executed, PEPS has done a fabulous job. We've heard all day today about increasing the number of days that it takes to get a work authorization executed. They've done a fabulous job in reducing the number of days, but sometimes time's of the essence, and sometimes that area office wants you to start working and go to the pre-con, and yet maybe a work authorization is not executed. So why can't there be a note or a letter from the area engineer or from TxDOT saying, yes, everything's been agreed upon, we just need to execute the contract, here's the effective date, and then actually write the effective date within the actual contract, whether it be the start of the contract or maybe just a supplemental. We need an additional body on the contract, a geotechnical firm, and but it's not on there, so now I have to do a supplemental work authorization. So therefore, we have to wait in order to get that executed before we actually do the work, but that's holding up the work at the area office.
I want to make sure I'm understanding your question. So you're essentially saying, like, hey, if something comes up and TxDOT doesn't have a contract with the CEI team, that you're saying that something's being held up because we're saying we have to wait on that CEI team to have a work authorization with them?
Well, you have the work authorization, the work authorization is not executed, or you're waiting on a supplemental work authorization.
Right.
In order to get your team out there.
Okay.
You got the contract. It's a matter of just executing it, or actually just executing a supplemental work authorization. So just like the contractor would do a change order, but you allow them to continue working, but you're not holding up progress, why would you not also have an effective date on the actual?
So I'm not sure. Yeah. So essentially, so I got asked to repeat the question. So essentially, the question is if you have a contract with the CEI team and you need like a supplemental agreement or you need them to sign the work authorization, that it sounds like you're saying you've heard text like, oh, well, we can't move forward with something yet because we're waiting on our CEI team. That's surprising because we still have TxDOT staff, so we should be able to meet with you regardless of if we have a work authorization with our CEI team or not. And that kind of goes back to how we have a CEI engineer in every one of our area offices. So essentially, we're not going to hold up a construction project, like a pre-construction meeting to move forward because we don't have our CEI team. That doesn't do you any good, and that really doesn't do TxDOT any good, so I'm surprised that you're saying that you're having that issue. But that's kind of a legal question, I feel like, on if saying, hey, I can write you a note saying, yeah, you're fine to move forward even though I don't have a contract. I don't know if we would be comfortable doing that, but we should still have the staff to be able to move forward and not hold a contractor up. But that shouldn't be the intent.
You want me to add something to that?
Gladly.
Not a problem. As far as doing work outside of a work authorization, that's a simple situation where if you do work outside of the work authorization, we're not obligated to pay you. We do make steps to try to expedite work authorizations or supplemental work authorizations to try to get that work done. There's some suggestions, there's opportunities that if you anticipate any kind of an issue that may pop up, that you can incorporate that into the work authorization, and if such situation would occur, you can go ahead and mobilize. So if you have an anticipated need of, maybe geotech, you can incorporate that in there with, sort of as, I hate to use the word contingency, but you could build something in there that if something is triggered, that would occur. But it is a legal contractual issue that if you do work outside of that work authorization, we are not obligated to pay you. That is a risk that you take to move forward with that. I hate to put it that way, but that's the truth.